Let's check in with Joseph Lindsley in Ukraine.
Not only have they been destroying a number of Russian ships, but, 13 jets in 11 days.
Joe. Little fucking Joe Lindsley.
Joe Lindsley is quickly becoming an American treasure in broadcasting.
Welcome to Ukraine Bank.
And Joe, I was reading about Putin's annual speech yesterday, and he warned that if NATO countries send their own troops to help Ukraine fend off Russia's invasion, it could lead to a nuclear conflict. And I wasn't as frightened as I would have been had we not talked about his threats so many times here and how Putin likes to do this. He just likes to rattle the cage, doesn't he?
Indeed, Bob. Hello from Kyiv. And, we always hear with reference to Putin, the term red lines, his so-called red lines. And I think as Ukrainians have shown these past 2 years, they've crossed many of those red lines. And the only way to win, in fact, is to cross the red lines, to call him on his bluff. Just as, one of the most extraordinary red lines that was crossed was when Ukraine hit the headquarters of the Black Sea Naval Fleet in Sevastopol, the very headquarters, with no Russian response for months afterward. And I think the reason why Putin was referred to the idea of NATO troops coming here, I mean, it's not even a remote possibility, let alone Ukrainian membership in NATO. I mean, if you look at everything NATO leaders have said, they have no desire to welcome Ukraine into NATO. President Macron of France, sort of strangely, and there's dispute, people have different opinions on what his intention was here. But he said a few days ago that Russia must be defeated because of their tyrannical hell they're trying to unleash upon the world. And he said even if it requires sending French troops into Ukraine. And so now some people say good on Macron for being strong, for trying to make Putin nervous. But others say, well, that those comments were sort of unnecessary. France, instead of talking a big tough game, why not just send serious ammunition to Ukraine? And Ukrainians say, they don't want NATO troops to come in here. They just need the weapons and the tools. And so it's sort of in that context, his remarks are a bit strange. Nevertheless, France, has, unlike the United States, both France and the United Kingdom have sent long-range weapons. The Storm Shadow missiles, which are produced, it's a joint French-British project. So those very powerful missiles have been sent. So France has done some good things, and they've pledged at least 100 of their sort of killer drones. They plan to be here sometime in the summer. So not especially quick. But so Putin was responding to that, but there is no sense that there would be NATO soldiers here whatsoever. Very, very little appetite for that. And meanwhile, because of Putin's, Putin has tried to convince people that one of the reasons why he launched the war on Ukraine was because of this fear of NATO expansion. And somehow this gets sort of put into the narrative that NATO is an enterprise that wants to expand. NATO very reluctantly accepts new members. You have, for more than 15 years, you've had countries desperately wanting to get in that club so that they don't get invaded the way that Ukraine has been. And the most recent, the newest NATO member, will soon be the Kingdom of Sweden. Hungary was the last NATO member to hold out. They were Viktor Orban and his regime were refusing to let the Swedes enter NATO. The parliament in Budapest just a few days ago voted to indeed accept Sweden as a member. This is pretty remarkable because Sweden has been neutral since the late 18th century. Even in World War II, the Swedes have been neutral. And now they're so afraid, they have both nautical and territorial borders with Russia, and they're so afraid of the threat that they're going to be in NATO now. And so it's actually Putin's actions have actually, you could say, are making NATO more powerful.
Mm-hmm. This email will interest you, Joe. It's from John, who writes, I'm a Canadian follower. I post Joseph's YouTube pieces on Facebook, and I get little or no response. But if I write a funny piece about snow shoveling, all my friends like it or comment. I wish he was on the radio here in Canada. Is there any way to increase his exposure? As I hope if people who are jaded and disinterested in Ukraine hear what he says, they will change their attitude. In my view, people should see that success for Ukraine is crucial for us in the West as well. Well, of course, people listen to us here online, on the app, on their computer, all over the world. But Joe, do you think about ways to widen your audience?
Indeed, and thanks, John, for that note. Yeah, we work on that all the time. We have a great team of volunteers here in Ukraine, whether it's on YouTube or Spotify and Instagram and Twitter. But I think as a lot of sort of resources from Ukraine have seen, especially on YouTube. I was banned from YouTube inexplicably for a month a year ago. I speak with other people here in Ukraine who they feel that their channels are throttled a little bit. So there's a steadily growing audience, but sometimes the growth is pretty slow. So there is, and you have to be. If you say too much about the war or destruction, that you could be sort of censored. I think ironically, maybe not ironically, but X or Twitter, under Elon Musk, even though he's not always a fan of Ukraine, but he's a fan of free speech, and Twitter is a place where you can continue to speak pretty freely. But it's hard to get stories out there, and this is Ukrainians feel deeply. I mean, even, as I was walking different places around Kyiv today, and on the TVs, you see on international media, the wall-to-wall coverage of the funeral of Navalny. Finally, Russian people are taking to the streets. 2 years of genocidal war, not enough to get them to take to the streets, but the funeral of one Russian. And this is a free country, so you see this stuff on TV here, but it's sort of crushing to people. They, why is the world so focused on this when there's funerals every single day? People who are willing to risk everything for freedom, to stand up to Putin and the Russian regime, and so it is. Yeah. So again, always grateful for the WGN audience to be able to share these reports every day, and there is, as always, it's a mixture of tragedy and hope, and it's always somewhere in between on that spectrum. I was talking with a friend who's fighting at the front yesterday, and he said he wrote to me, "I don't want to complain, but I don't know if I will live long." This is the heavy stuff that you face every single day here, and at the same time, as we see, we have there's rumors today that yet another Russian jet, we can't confirm anything yet, but maybe was shot down. But now, it's 13 Russian jets in 11 days, 4 of Russia's most powerful sort of surveillance planes that are used to coordinate attacks. They have 24 of those, and 4 of them have been shot down since New Year's. And then, in light of this big news, that's not a major headline. Instead, if you look at, say, British media, the headline is Russia's talking about, they were quiet about this for many weeks, but they're talking about the Russian plane that was shot down, and the Kremlin said contained more than 65 Ukrainian prisoners of war. So this story seems to sort of crop up whenever it's necessary to cover good Ukrainian news. There's zero evidence. I mean, you look at the original photos of the crash site, you don't see any bodies. There's really scant evidence that there were 65 Ukrainian POWs on that plane. And even if there were, that would be a Russian war crime to have put them in that position. But it seems, by all accounts, it seems like pretty much a fake story. And yet that is the leading headline about Ukraine, rather than, Ukrainians are not only have they been destroying a number of Russian ships, but 13 jets in 11 days. Why is that not the headline? And it's tough to get this truth out there.
It certainly is a real David versus Goliath war, and with the weekend upon us, you have some free time. I would encourage anyone to check out our website, the Surratt Show page at WGNradio.com, and you'll find Joseph's reports there, and also links to his sites. You can watch videos, share, and spread the word. And Joseph, I hope you have a good weekend, and we'll talk to you Monday.
Thank you for introducing Ukraine on your social media pages. That's very important that much more people can get more information about the situation here and how everybody can help Ukraine to stay stronger and to save all the world.
Що він сказав?
Well, which side are you on?
На чиїй ти стороні?
Come on now. Oh, which side are you on?
На чиїй ти стороні?
Єбать.